3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to episode 5 of DBAD, the Don't Be a Dickhead podcast, with me, John Gilbert.
And me, Iain Thompson.
So I gave you an extra bit there, because normally I just let you say your name. I let you say and me this time. Relaxing into our relationship by episode 5.
I feel like I've got a lot more respect. I feel like I've had a promotion.
Well done. Keep up the good work. We might even let you stay on the show. So, although it's actually a few hours since we did speak about a further co-host joining us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. So
big news are coming.
Yeah, I mean, we did realise that by episode 5 we might have run out of all of our funny stories. A listener might be thinking, when are you going to start telling us your funny stories?
Dun.
Yeah, so maybe it's me that needs firing. Anyway, on with the show. We're going to be talking about mistakes. But before we do, Iain, what's a mistake?
A mistake is behaviour that comes from ill judgment.
So it's not just something going wrong. It's where there's some element of blame.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, but that might be that... Is it always ill judgment, though? Because if you tried to do something and it didn't work, well, that's just feedback, isn't it? That's not necessarily a mistake.
I think so,
So
yeah.
this is where mistakes are like, when we make a mistake, we often feel bad about it because we hold ourselves responsible and maybe even beat yourself up about it and go through almost like a grief curve where you're like, oh God, I'm rubbish and I'm always going to make mistakes. I never get stuff wrong and I mustn't let this happen again. Whereas actually, we need to have more of a healthy attitude with mistakes because, as you've mentioned on previous podcasts, dickheadery doesn't just affect other people, it can affect yourself as well. And I guess depending on what a mistake is depending on how you look at it. So you've had an example of a recent experience.
Oh, yeah.
Where you have been accused of making a mistake, whereas you feel that you were not the mistaker.
As with most weeks, then I often ask my partner Claire, what sort of dickhead behaviour could we talk about on this one? And I always tell her the topics and we have a chat about it. And she normally comes up with lots of examples where I've been a dickhead. And this one she came up with, and she made the suggestion, and I took it to mean that she thought that I wasn't the dickhead and she thought I was the dickhead. And anyway, here's the scenario. We were in Edinburgh, it was last summer, and her 11-year-old son decided to go on the swings. There was a few kids around, and they were all going in the car park and whatnot, playground. And me and her son had been kicking about a football, and then he said, I might just go in the playground for a bit with the other guys. I was like, yeah, that's absolutely fine. So he went in, and instead of going on, you get two types of swing. You get like an adult swing that's just like a bit of wood or a bit of plastic. A bench, yeah, and you swing on it. Or there's the other kind where it's like a full like baby seat with spaces for your legs and things to keep you in so that you can't fall out. Well, it turns out when you're 11 and you're quite tall anyway for an 11-year-old, when you get in one of them, you can't get out. It's really difficult. In fact, it's impossible to get out without two 40-year-olds helping you. So anyway, he got in this swing, and we noticed him getting in, and Claire was like, don't do that. And then he got in, we're like, oh God, okay then. And then we saw him trying to get out a few seconds later, and he couldn't. And I mean, for me, this is genius. Like, we were like laughing a little bit about it, and then I got out my phone and started filming him. And I filmed him for about 4 minutes, desperately trying to get out of this thing. And it just goes on, and it gets funnier, I think. It gets funnier, then it gets less funny, then it gets more funny again. And then I stopped filming and went and helped him get out. In fact, I think I gave the phone to someone else so they could continue filming while I went and helped him get out. And then I sent the film to a load of my friends because I thought it was really funny. Now, Claire suggested that my filming and my sending of the film to all my friends was dickhead behaviour, whereas when she was telling me the story, I thought she meant the dickhead behaviour was climbing in the swing in the first place when you should have known better. So dickheadery is in the eye of the dickheaded.
Yeah. So, I mean, his was a mistake. He was just optimistic about climbing into that swing. And we've all been there. I nearly lost an arm doing that once. And actually, I went to the Scottish Cup final about 3 years ago with my son. And whilst the match was fairly entertaining, what was more entertaining was the hour that it took for a adolescent to be removed from a chair that he'd wedged himself into, trying to climb underneath the flappy seat thing and got stuck.
Brilliant.
And they had to like break it all and so on. But that was good, and that was a clear mistake and what a dickheady thing to do. But nobody was harmed from that. Well, the chair was maybe harmed. I did film a bit, however, I didn't send it around. So, I mean, is there no part in you that thinks that was a bit dickheadery?
I mean, it was just funny. It was just fun. I wasn't saying
I think it's all right.
Do you know what, as well? It wasn't.
Claire.
I don't think it was dickheadery to get in the swing. I think that was the mistake. That wasn't the dickhead behaviour. That was the mistake.
No, he was. No, let's be clear. The 11-year-old is not the dickhead in the story.
Yeah, that was the mistake. Whereas she thought the mistake was sending the video around to everyone and filming him. But I mean, I think that was just, it was just good, fun, funny. It was funny. It was funny.
Can we put it on our YouTube channel?
You see, I've already mentioned this. Let me have another chat about it.
It might be a bit of dickheadery.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, we're only on episode 5. I mean, basically, Claire is 100% of our listenership.
We can't afford to lose that, no.
No. See, we're not putting it on, Claire. See, we do things for our fans here on the DBAD. Now, it's interesting you should bring that up, because what you've just done there is just denied that you in any way made a mistake on it. Because one of the things that you're meant to do with a mistake is just own up to it and take it on the chin.
And this is what I've put down as well in my notes for this podcast. I've put down about the fact that, is it dickhead behaviour? Is it dickheadery to make a mistake? And I don't think it is. I don't think there's any issue with making a mistake. And I know we're probably going to talk about that a bit more in a bit as well. For me, the only dickheadery with mistakes is not recognising your mistakes.
Or, well, I think there's more to it than that. The other thing you can do, as I mentioned at the top, is just like overly beating yourself up or somebody else about it. We all make mistakes. It's part of life, right? If you try and do anything interesting, anything different, you try and do lots of, you're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And that's one of the like coping mechanisms that I make in life. Not so much as a father and as a husband and as a friend and a family member, but more to do with like in business. Only fairly recently, I made a mistake. That mistake has cost me £4,500.
Wow.
I did have a pretty much sleepless night. Not over losing £4,500. Which, I mean, let's be honest, we're in the COVID-19 lockdown. It's not an ideal time to lose any money, right? So there is an impact from that. But it was more me beating myself up for making that mistake. It was an administrative error that could have been avoided, right? And I talked this through with my partner, and she was going down the line of saying, no, it wasn't your fault, it was this, that, and just actually blaming other circumstances. Now, I can do that, and maybe that will make me feel better. I have a tendency to blame myself for everything that goes wrong, even other people's mistakes, particularly if I've hired them, because I always think back to me and think, well, that was, by the way, this one wasn't somebody else's fault, this was my fault. But it's just about, that becomes quite unhealthy for me sometimes, because I've got a particularly strong locus of control, so I feel like I should be on top of everything, and when something goes wrong, I probably beat myself up more than I should do. Self-inflicted dickheadery is something I become victim to. Not particularly funny, but I mean, if you want to tease me about it, that's fine. I might not be here for episode 6, though.
But you've owned your mistake. You've had your sleepless night. You've gone through that period of grief, and you've come out a better person on the other side.
I hope so. And I tried explaining this to my kids, because I went through the basics of the scenario, and I really could have scapegoated other factors and other people in this, but I didn't. I said, yeah, this was my mistake. I take responsibility. I'm really sorry. I don't actually know what I was thinking. But it's done now, and I take responsibility, and I take financial responsibility for that.
Would you say you're a dickhead because of it?
No, if I'm honest. I think it was a silly mistake to make, but I feel like I made up for it by taking responsibility for it and then letting myself off the hook, because, yeah, I do make mistakes all the time, but I also get lots of stuff right. One of the worst times I've ever had happened quite a few years ago, and we had, it's against another business thing, and we were having problems getting paid by a particular client. It's a long story, which I won't go into. one of my colleagues had just made quite a disparaging remark about them. And I pulled them up on it and said, look, I know we've got these issues, but this is our client. We shouldn't speak about people like that. Then I went to my desk and thought, I may be being a bit of a hypocrite here because I was a bit pissed off with them as well. So as a joke, I forwarded my colleague and one of my former business partners a very disparaging email about that client and saying this is what we should do. And I said like a really over the top kind of they should all lose their jobs. They're all absolute imbeciles and all. And it was a parody of what my colleague had been saying earlier on. Now, A, it was a mistake to have written that. B, it was a mistake to have emailed it to those guys because they had moments of dickheadery, including accidentally forwarding that email on to said client, who then forwarded it on to everybody in their organisation. So when my phone rang later on that day and I picked up the phone and somebody read one of the more outrageous lines that I'd made within that email, it was like the world had just fallen beneath me. And I was like, how has this happened? And I was in shock for about a week. But I'll tell you what I did. I immediately took responsibility for it. And I said, look, I don't expect you to believe me. The email was a joke. And obviously you were never meant to read this. But I wrote it. And because everybody else was going, oh, just say you've been hacked and all this stuff. Because it was just like, well, I can do. But that's just bullshit. So I held my nerve. I took responsibility. I individually rang the people involved. It was horrible doing it, but I apologised. And they said, well, we're going to think about how we respond to this. But they didn't hang me out to dry. They could have published that. They could have shared that around. It just made me look like the world's biggest dickhead. It was awful. But I've come out of it wiser, and I would never do that now. Not even for a joke. Not even on a podcast.
There's loads of stories of people like sending a text about someone to the person who it's about and things like that, and hurling your phone at a wall to try and stop the text from sending and things like that. And you know, you get a lot of that. And I suppose the dickhead thing there is actually putting it down onto paper or onto email or onto text or whatever, isn't it?
Well, and also being unkind about people.
Yeah.
Because our words, it doesn't mean that you can't ever be pissed off with somebody. It doesn't mean that you can't ever joke about these things. But like, what seems funny to you in that moment, it's not up to you how that is received. That might be why I have depending on who it is, quite an infuriating habit of admitting that I'm wrong quite easily within an argument, even like midway through making my case, and I'll stop and go, no, actually, you're right. Which takes the fun out of it. What a dickhead.
Especially if you don't think that you were wrong.
Oh, no, I do.
Oh, right, okay. If you do think you're wrong, then that's fine. I thought you meant like just for an easy life, you're just going to go, yeah, right, that's fine, yeah, I'm wrong.
Oh, no, because I'm wrong.
Okay, that's fine.
I can't think of times when I've said I'm wrong when I don't think I am. I guess I will have done.
Yeah, I think I've definitely done it. I've got a big example of that, but I can't tell you for legal reasons.
Oh, wow. That's just a tease.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I should have shared the story I shared. It might remind that person, one of the people might go, oh, God, yeah, I've still got that email. Let's ruin Gilbert. This thing about mistakes, as I say, it's not to hold yourself accountable for everything and put yourself down. You've got to move on for it. And I think the other thing is, whether it's in business or in anything, you see this in sport a lot. So I play squash. And if you make a mistake and it costs you a point, there is no point in getting angry about it and no point in blaming yourself, because it increases the likelihood of you making another mistake. Yeah. And I've said this before to teammates. I'm just like, it used to be if you saw me make a mistake, if I didn't return a serve and just gave them the point, I'm going to lose the next rally, because all I'm doing is beating myself up on the mistake that I just made rather than focusing on the next point that I could. And that's something that you've got to teach yourself to be able to do, and you've got to move on. And I think the mistake that a lot of people make, no pun intended, is striving for perfection, because none of us can achieve perfection. You've just got to strive for excellence, which is just the best it can be, but there will still be mistakes along the way. I think it's a really important thing to recognise is that everybody will make mistakes. You can't go through life seeking perfection, because nothing interesting will ever happen. some of the most interesting things have ever happened because of mistakes. I mean, like they talk about Thomas Edison had like 10,000 failed attempts to invent the light bulb before he did it. And Viagra came from a mistake where they were trying to, was it blood thinning or something, and it gave us an erection instead. So some of the best things of like light bulbs and erections have come from mistakes. So
two of the best things in the world.
Well, look, if you want to have a wank in the light and you're of a certain age, where would you be without those mistakes, eh?
True.
I tell you, you'd be in the dark, unsatisfied. So on that note, I think we'll wrap up the show. So
it's been a corker. We did have a question to put to our audience as well, didn't we? About the playground incident. Oh
yes. So the charming story that Iain shared earlier on, in which he and an 11-year-old went to the park together. No, not that story. And he got stuck in a swing, right? Who made the mistake? Was it, what are we calling him? Because we're not going to use his real name.
Sam.
Right. So if you think it was Sam's mistake to get wedged in the swing, please tweet us, #DickheadSam. And if you think it was Ian's mistake to film it and then send it
and
around,
then distribute it,
his friends for their amusement, #DickheadIan. Ian with an extra I, IAIN.
There we go. So let us know what you think.
So, I mean, we have to remember that we're only in episode 5 and Claire is still our only listener. So I
can see which way this one's going.
You may be labelled a dickhead. But as long as you learn from that, it'll be okay. So thank you for listening. I've been John Gilbert.
I've been Ian Thompson.
And remember, don't be a dickhead.
Don't be a dickhead.